Welcome and thanks for coming along to the Study Queensland Global Webinar Series. Today's webinar will be a deep dive on the Middle East education sector. My name is David Hackett and I'm the Business Development Manager for Trade and Investment Queensland in the Middle East, based in Abu Dhabi in the United Arab Emirates. First of all, we're going to go through the agenda and then we'll deal with some housekeeping items. Today's agenda, we'll firstly hear from Ms. Donna Massey, Trade Commissioner for TIQ in the Middle East and Africa. She's going to cover Queensland's international education and training footprint in the region, doing business in the region, so Middle East 101. We will then hear from Ms. Kelly Matthews, Trade Commissioner and Commercial Counsellor for Austrade in the region, and Kelly will cover, give us an update, a regional update on COVID-19, a regional education update from a federal perspective, and Austrade's education insights and focus in the region. I'm then going to speak about the education sector, go through the sectors, some Queensland market successes and our potential market opportunities in the region. Lastly, but most importantly, we're going to hear from Ms. Lee Arnold, Business Development Manager for Expo 2020 for Trade Investment Queensland, to discuss the event and potential opportunities for Queensland. We will then finish with Q&A. But first, we'll deal with some housekeeping items. So if everyone could keep their microphones muted, this session is being recorded for your information, and please type your questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen, and we'll get to those. We're going to have a Q&A session, as mentioned earlier, at the end of the webinar, but the ones we can't get to during the webinar, we will answer them in due course. Now I'm going to hand over to the Trade Investment Commissioner for the Middle East and Africa, Ms. Donna Massey.
Welcome to everyone and thank you for joining us today. Thank you, David. As David said, Donna Massey, Trade and Investment Commissioner for the Middle East and North Africa. I've been in the region for 29 years, off and on, and whilst we look at the whole of the GCC and North Africa, predominantly our focus is on Kuwait, the UAE and Saudi Arabia. So I'd just like to walk you quickly through four of the facilities that we have in market, just to give you an idea of our local footprint. Sorry, bear with me. Okay, so first we have the Australian International School, which is in Sharjah. It was opened in 2006. It has a fantastic principal, Mr. Steve McCluckie, who is the ex-principal of Varsity College. Steve has transformed the campus and is recognised as one of the 3 official schools for Expo 2020 in Dubai. Approximately 70% of the teachers, interestingly, at AIS are from Australia. We are looking at having the 2nd campus opening in Dubai in September next year. Aviation Australia Riyadh College. This has been another hugely successful education model with strong industry links. Graduating students get employment placement with Boeing, Airbus, Rolls-Royce and the military. This was a very interesting business model because traditionally the Saudi students have not been interested in tertiary and further education or vet courses. They considered them fairly low level. The success of the model of the AA college has been really transformative within market to help transform the traditional pushback there has between for vet qualifications. There's now over 4,500 students and 2 campuses. Australian College of Kuwait opened in 2005. It's been a long-term partnership with Central Queensland University and it has proved very successful with courses in aviation, aircraft maintenance, business courses, engineering and the English language. It'd be nice if I could speak English at the moment. They also have a wonderful maritime centre which has a full mission ship handling simulator, which I've been on. It's absolutely phenomenal. And Boeing also donated, I think it's a 777 or a 747, which is a full-bodied airplane which the student can use for their training. It's a remarkable facility with over 3,500 students. JCU, one of my favourites. So we work very closely here in market with the Ministry of Food Security. Excuse me. And this has led to the introduction of James Cook University to the Minister, Her Excellency Miriam Al-Muhairi, and the relationship was developed from there. JCU are now working closely with the Ministry in driving the blue economy by managing the Sheikh Khalifa Marine Innovation Park in Quain. There are a number of other strategic initiatives that have grown from this relationship. JCU is very active in the region and have very, very well respected within the market. Middle East 101. I'm not sure of any of our guests today have had much to do with the Middle East, but basically I know all markets are about relationships, but it's more specifically in this market, I think, than anywhere else. It's very much about face-to-face, building relationships, gaining trust, and establishing rapport at every level. That includes the local families, industry, and government. Communication here traditionally, as I said, has been done face-to-face or in what we call the majlis. The majlis is a sitting area, which is obviously normally in palaces or houses, and it's where all the Emiratis will sit down and they will make decisions, and they will discuss the economy, they will discuss government, they will discuss business. So a lot of the big decisions in the country are made in the majlis. Emails often will not be read in this market. Often, once you've developed that relationship with your business partners, a lot of the communication will be done via WhatsApp. This is not unusual in our part of the world. A lot of people find it weird. They'll come into market, they'll have all these wonderful meetings and it's very positive. Then they'll go home, they'll do their follow-up and there'll be nothing. So just bear in mind, that's not a snub. It's just something that once the relationship is at the level where people are comfortable, then the communications are more face-to-face, WhatsApp or via the phone. It's very, very important in our market to show commitment to the region. And not come with your hand out. The streets here are not paved with gold. Yes, there is a lot of liquidity in our market, but it takes a lot of time and effort to gain trust here. It's very important to show commitment to the region and be up here in market at least every 2 to 3 months if you are developing those relationships and to be seen. Pilot projects and proof of concepts are highly regarded here. It shows, once again, a commitment to the region if you're coming to the market, to show that you're prepared to invest time and effort and you have a long-term vision. It does take time, but the rewards are there in our market. Thank you. I'd now like to introduce you to Ms. Kelly Matthews, Commercial Consular and Trade Commissioner based here in the Embassy in Abu Dhabi. Over to you, Kelly.
Thanks, Donna, and good afternoon, everyone. As Donna said, I'm Kelly Matthews. I'm the Australian Trade in Abu Dhabi, and I lead the education portfolio across the Middle East and Africa region. It's a pleasure to be here to give you a sense of Austrade and Austrade operations in the Middle East and Africa region, focus on the region, and also some of the things that we're starting to see over at the macro level and other insights that can help you gain a better understanding of the diversity across our Middle East and African markets. In terms of Austrade in the Middle East and Africa region, our remit covers the Middle East, both the Gulf and the Levant, Africa, Turkey, Iran, and Pakistan, and maintain 11 offices across the region in order to discharge our responsibilities. In terms of education across the region, we have 9 locations where we have development managers who focus on education, in addition to a number of other sectors where they specialise. The sectors that we focus on across our course, education training, it's a very big our interest in this region. Resources and energy, food and agribusiness, digital technologies, healthcare and advanced manufacturing. And as you know, education, skills and training cuts across it. In terms of what we do in our region, we're focused around workforces of the future. So the framing we use to prioritise efforts and activities are really positioned around making sure Australia is considered a world leader in education. So there's 2 key areas of effort that we use around that. One is around Australia. So it's around promoting in Australia and Queensland as one of the world's top 3 destinations to study at, and Australian courses and in some of the world's most highly sought after. The other lens and the other area of effort that we use is around Australian education solutions and services exports, and trying to link those into Middle East and African markets and stakeholder market. So the objective there is really around trying to position the education sector as quality providers of innovative education solutions and world-leading curriculum and education content. So at the moment, we're really looking to respond to industry opportunities for transnational education delivery, curriculum licensing, and the digital platforms and services that underpin the needs that are seen in these COVID times. So across all of these regions, they're very different markets with very different tactics. The markets are quite diverse and not one size fits all. We can't region-wide generalisations. So we have a lot of ground cover and markets to cover in the Middle East and Africa regions. We have to prioritise and focus. So we do that in a network by working with states and territories, including Queensland, who are very active here in the market, by working across the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, Department of Education and Skills, and our Department of Home Affairs, particularly policy issues. And I think we all work together, industry stakeholders and market, to try and amplify the really positive messages about Australia and education. So look, I'd like to turn now to some of the regional perspectives on it and give you a sense of what we're hearing from our stakeholders in market, and some of the opportunities that we're seeing in terms that will shape our forward work. So COVID-19 has really been a reset for education across this region. As we've seen in Australia, COVID-19 is a game changer, and actually in this region, classroom delivery of learning was the accepted norm. So COVID-19 has really forced educators and ministries of education to really convert the talk of new ways of learning to actually delivering learning in new and virtual ways. And particularly here in the UAE, a very quick turnaround in fundamentally shifting the way education was delivered across K-12 and also the university and higher ed sector here. It hasn't been without challenges for students, parents and teachers, but my sense is that while it is early days, there is an increased appetite and a new acceptance for alternative ways of learning, including online and blended learning, and in some countries, the recognition that there is a need to modernise course content, particularly from the traditional older ways of delivering education to newer ways where education can be blended across platforms. I think what's clear to me is that across the region there are gaps in investment in learning platforms, in teacher training and also content development. And my sense is that there will be a period of reflection now by many ministries of education and schools about how e-learning and new ways of learning can be integrated into the new normal going forward. From a student recruitment perspective and COVID, Australia's reputation is good, and our positive and really strong COVID-19 response is acknowledged by key student influencers and agents. COVID will lead to changing demand, consumer demand and consumer behaviours, both in the short term. I think what we're seeing is that health considerations of studying and travelling abroad will be extremely important, and Australia has a story to tell, as does Queensland. And I think what learners and parents ultimately value in terms of quality, price and delivery modes will also change. And that's, I'm seeing, very different for different markets. In terms of COVID-19 and the macro, I think we need to recognise the economic situation. So COVID-19 with low oil prices will impact on national budgets going forward, and that will have an impact for education. So that possibly will have an impact on education pipelines in key markets, including the scholarship segment, and generally speaking, people's and prospective students and families have to pay and to fund international study across the region. More broadly, and looking across sectors, COVID-19 will impact on national policy priorities and initiatives, particularly around areas like food security, agricultural technologies, digital health and digital technologies. So I think that's where Australian education solutions, including our great skills training, together with our strengths in regional development, can really underpin the value offering Australia provides this region going forward. I might give a very quick, some very quick insights in terms of some of the things we're seeing across some of our key markets here. So, particularly in the Gulf countries, so we call them the Gulf Cooperation Council markets. For those of you who maybe don't know so much about the Middle East, many of the GCC countries have national visionary policies that they are progressing and implementing. A lot of it has links to human capability, and at the heart of that is many of the GCC's economies wanting to pivot to knowledge-based economies. The economies here in the Gulf are diversifying from petrochemical and pushing out into new sectors. There's a big focus on major infrastructure and also national priorities. So as those economies diversify and expand into new sectors, there is a need for capability development. There is a need for executive training, upskilling citizens to support that. The economic diversification, also achieving policies that national governments have set. So a lot of that training and a lot of that upskilling needs to be niche, needs to be best in class, and it also needs to be viable. Obviously, Pakistan is also part of a remit here in and I think a couple of reflections on Pakistan. Obviously, it's a key student recruitment market for Australia, and in Pakistan, education has been the leading services for many years, and many international students have chosen Australia as their study destination. And in 2019, more than 13,000 students studied in Australia. Feedback we're getting from Australian in-market representatives indicate that Australian universities are still receiving applications. Feedback from students about Australia as a study destination remains very positive. And I think while online are welcomed by some students, the strong preference is for students to study on campus in Australia. So obviously looking forward to 2021 semester one. And I think I'd like to quickly touch on Africa. Obviously, when we talk about the Africa region, it's a very different market in itself, but the demographics are a key driver of the longer term opportunities for Australia. By 2050, the population is estimated to be about 2.4 billion people, growing to about 30% of the world's population by 2100. That growing population will need of education and skills to meet the challenges of growth. And Africa is complex, and it is challenging. Important to understand the market and understand where the commercial opportunities lie. For example, I know in Nigeria every year around 1 million students miss out on domestic university places. So there is a very strong need for and a strong desire to study overseas. In some markets in Africa, we're starting to see a change in perception around the uptake in TVET and industry-aligned skills. That's been part of a longer-term push by national governments, and we are starting to see those bear fruit. I'm very conscious of the time, so I may just sort of share a broader reflection across the Middle East and Africa region. And I think during COVID, education agents, our Australian institutions and our competitors have been very active on the digital front. They have really pivoted to virtual and digital English students, and I think that's something that will be here to stay for the long run in one form or another. I'm conscious that there'll be the opportunity for Q&A, but I think to sum up, the Middle East and Africa is a very diverse market. Today we've just skimmed the surface, but there's a lot behind individual markets and the regional subgroupings. But there are a range of tools and resources and data that you can use to explore these markets more and understand the region and how they are compared to other international markets. I would just say, in addition to the great resources that TIQ have, there's a range of education-specific information such as market overviews and dashboards. There's a range of education data that you can use access through MIP Orbis. And there's also a really interesting tool called the Where to Compete tool, which is a tool where you can and you can also compare a range of education services to see what what the opportunities are in specific markets. So I would recommend that you have a look. There is metrics that can help support education providers in framing up their forward and regional strategies. And finally, just to remind you, COVID-19, since March, we've been providing weekly education-focused updates on COVID-19 for all parts of the globe, including the Middle East and Africa. So they are real-time insights in terms of what's happening across schools, higher education, the Ministry of Education and other policy announcements. So it does help keep your finger on the pulse in key markets within Middle East and Africa. So thank you, Donna, and thank you, Team Queen, for the chance to provide a very quick overview today and to really share the things that we're in the region as the region deals with, and also to help build that broader awareness of Middle East and in a way to sort of build our further education links across the region. So thank you, Donna. David. Thank you, team.
Thanks, Kelly, for those insights. You certainly covered a lot of ground, but I'm hopeful that that was very insightful for everyone who's attending the webinar today. Next, I'm just going to bring up some stats. Won't be a moment. Firstly, we'll just have a look at, that is the vet sector. You can see the numbers there. Numbers certainly aren't large, students coming from the Middle East to Australia with the vet sector. A few reasons for that, particularly in sort of Kuwait and UAE. It's not, most of the nationals, being Kuwaitis and Emiratis, don't see the vet sector as a priority, so they wouldn't go to Australia to study vocational training. A little bit different in Saudi Arabia, and I think there's enormous opportunities in Saudi Arabia, and we'll come across those shortly. We'll discuss them in further detail. We go to ELICOS, you see the numbers are much larger. With those numbers, probably most interesting with Saudi Arabia there, you will find that that's a lot of students who are doing ELICOS who will then go into higher education after completing their ELICOS course. Go to higher education, numbers are, over the years, the last few years, the numbers have probably declined somewhat. The reason for that being regional governments' greater focus for students to study in their own country. But Australia do still receive a number of sponsored, government-sponsored students, but these numbers have also been lower in recent years due to economic and budgetary cuts. Commerce and engineering are probably the top courses in higher education in the region. Next, we're just going to talk about some opportunities. There's some examples of some Queensland successes there. And you'll notice that they really are niche opportunities, and most of those have come around because of our relationships. Writing regulations, that was for the National Qualifications Authority. Certifications and accreditations, they were for example, Dubai and Abu Dhabi Police in regards to certification of shooting ranges and the cleaning of the lead content at the shooting ranges. So yeah, very niche, as you can see. The specific teacher training courses, they were aligned with some Queensland universities, with some Saudi Arabian universities. Agriculture, and it's interesting because a lot of the sectors, and I'm talking about industrial sectors, there's always a training component quite often needed. And Kelly mentioned food and agriculture. In this region, 95% of all product is imported. So they're trying to have a lesser reliance, so create their own capability. And that was an example with the aquaculture training. Sector related, train the trainers, that was related to the automotive industry. And once again, it highlights across industries that training in all sorts of sectors is required. The digital technologies, this is an opportunity that's we currently have happening, and it's a result of COVID. Obviously, with people traveling less, the digital technologies in training. And let me say that in the Middle East, for example, in higher education, online degrees and whatnot aren't fully accepted by the relative governments, but we're hopeful that that'll change over in time. So yes, very much niche opportunities that that have happened. Next, which we see as the largest opportunities for the whole training sector in vocational education and training, are the Saudi Arabian Giga projects, which you may be aware of or may not be aware of. The Saudi Arabian government has a mandate to diversify from an oil-based economy, and second mandate is to employ Saudi Arabian nationals. Hence, these giga projects, which we're talking about, value to well over $1 trillion, are to, in addition, create sustainable tourism. At the moment, a lot of Saudis go to all other countries in the world for tourism, but these giga projects are designed to actually bring tourists to Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, I first went there in 2010. It is certainly a different country and far more open now than it was in 2010. At the time I went, women weren't allowed to drive. Women are now driving, and women really weren't part of the workforce. And today that is very much encouraged. And the Saudi Giga projects, will give you an example probably of Qiddiya. Qiddiya's like a new city that's being developed. They're looking and developing industries within that. It'll be a smart city. They are going to have quite a number of tourism assets, and they're looking at, there's a recent tender go out for Qiddiya College for the training of 15,000 Saudi nationals to be trained in hospitality. And that's only one of the smaller giga projects. There's 3 that are based on the Red Sea. You say, well, why would I want to go to Saudi Arabia for a vacation? You may not, but there will be lots of others that will. These are going to be state-of-the-art facilities, and money will not be spared in making them the best of the best. NEOM, the Red Sea project, and Amala are all based on the Red Sea, which is absolutely amazing settings, pristine, and yeah, there's just enormous opportunities in the training sector. We've already had some Queensland companies win contracts, more in the infrastructure side of things. So just prior to COVID-19 in March, we actually had a scoping mission planned to go to Saudi Arabia, meet with all the stakeholders to scope out their requirements, their needs, and how we may be able to get, fit Queensland companies for those needs. So unfortunately, due to COVID, that has now been deferred. And if you've had a look at recent Saudi numbers, they're suffering from COVID-19 fairly badly. Their numbers are quite high. That mission will be proceeding, the scoping mission, as soon as possible. As we say in the Middle East, inshallah, which means God's will is when that'll be. But suffice to say, enormous opportunities with the Giga projects. We'll have a better idea once we can conduct the scoping mission, but we certainly see enormous potential across a range of industries, which will all require training of some sort across a range of sectors. So it'll be interesting to, we're looking forward to getting over there, so it'll be interesting to see the benefits of that over time. And this is going to go on for a number of years. Now, due to COVID-19 and budget cuts, some of these projects may be delayed somewhat, but the mandate certainly by the Saudi Arabian government certainly has not changed. And it's certainly, they're going to be the largest infrastructure projects in the world for some time to come. That's it from me. I'm now going to hand over to my colleague, Lee Arnold, who's going to tell us everything about Expo 2020 Dubai. Over to you, Lee.
Thank you, David, and hello to everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm just going to quickly share my screen. Talking to you about Expo today. I did just want to have a quick chat about marketing in the GCC, just to let you all know that digital here in the Middle East there's a very high digital penetration in comparison to Australia. So there's a much higher proportion of the population that has that uses smartphones, and the population is very active, with 99% of the population actually using social media platforms. So if, you know, for any marketing purposes, we do just want to point out that it is a different landscape here than in Australia. And the highest performing platforms are Facebook, WhatsApp and YouTube. And the largest advertising audiences are reached on Facebook, LinkedIn and Instagram. So if you are moving into this market and you are considering any marketing, then it's best to engage with a local company who has that market intelligence, and can help you set that up. So now we'll move on to Expo. So this is a render of the Australian Pavilion that is going to be within the Expo 2020 Dubai site. I'm sure that you have all heard that Expo has now been postponed. So we're expecting that to start next year in October 2021 and go through to March 2022. The Australian Pavilion is going to include a visitor experience centre, which will be on the ground floor. There will be 3 parts to the visitor experience centre, and upstairs there will be a VIP business area where we'll be holding all types of symposiums, business breakfast, lunches and dinners, meetings, and that kind of thing, to further Australia's interests around the world. And in the downstairs outdoor area, there will also be a stage you can see here. And on the left, there will be a food and beverage outlets for the general public, so that they can come in and experience some Australian food and drinks. So Expo really is going to be a unique opportunity, and especially the Dubai Expo, because nowhere in the world has there been a truly global expo. So prior to COVID-19 hitting, they were expecting 25 million visits to the Expo site over the 6 months that it runs, from 1 October 2021 to 31 March 2022. And under normal circumstances with a World Expo, over 70% of the visitors actually come from the host country. And this time, because of where the UAE is placed, they were expecting that 70% of the visitors would come from outside of the UAE. There are currently 193 countries that are committed to participating in Expo 2020 Dubai, and none of those countries have pulled out with COVID-19. And in fact, many of those countries have actually increased their budgets because it's largely being viewed as a wonderful COVID-19 recovery strategy, just to, you know, further explore all of the opportunities that are going to be available to us with collaborating with, you know, countries from around the world. So the Expo, as you all, some of you may remember, Brisbane hosted the World Expo in '88, and I believe that that was about a 43 hectare site, and the Dubai site is 438 hectares, so it's 10 times the size, and it's going to be an absolute extravaganza. So the reason that they believe that this will be the first world truly global expo is because 2/3 of the world lives within an 8-hour flight of Dubai, and 1/3 of the world's population lives within a 4-hour flight. So it just means that it's just such an accessible destination. And I think because it has such a truly unique culture as well, if people haven't visited the Middle East, it's unlike visiting anywhere else. So within the Expo site itself, there are actually 3 districts, with the Al Wasl Dome in the centre being the absolute masterpiece of the Expo site. So we have the Opportunity District, the Sustainability District and the Mobility District, and Australia is going to be situated within the Mobility District. They have an entire Expo Village off to the side, that's for housing workers. There is a smaller Dubai Exhibition Centre. However, this is actually not large enough to hold all of the exhibits that normally happen in Dubai. So there will only be a few select exhibitions that will be held on site during that 6 months. And we also have the train station, so that transport to and from public transport is very accessible to the site. Now, these are the visitor analytics. So now, and as I said, this is the pre-COVID-19 statistics, and I believe that they are very busily redoing them at the moment, but until we have new statistics, this is what we have to work with. And this is one set of statistics that I don't believe will change too much. The visitor analytics, so the top 5 countries that we're expecting visitors from to attend to Expo 2020 Dubai are India, Saudi, China, the UK and Oman. So these are actually countries that are obviously of enormous interest to Queensland companies. Anyway, India, we obviously do a lot of trade with. China and the UK are tremendously of interest as well. So and Saudi Arabia, you know, from within the Middle Eastern region, provide the most students to Australia as well. So these are countries that, you know, they will have many visitors coming from. They will also be bringing with them many delegations. So there's going to be a lot of opportunity for engagement and collaboration with these countries during the 6-month event. So just to give you some background with the UAE and Queensland, so there's $1.1 billion worth of trade that's done each year, and there's $2 billion worth of UAE investment in Queensland. So we have a lot of projects that are currently going on here, and as you've heard from Kelly and David and Donna, the Commissioner, that there are many opportunities that are currently happening and in the future. So Queensland as a state has not yet committed formally to participating with the Australian Pavilion. That we're hoping will happen within the next few months. We do, however, know that we will be having a large participation. The 6 priority areas that we have looked at and found to be the most significant for Queensland are transport and smart cities, And this is definitely coming into play with, you know, from a global perspective, but especially in this region with the giga projects. Education and research, investment, tourism and sport, life sciences, and food, agriculture and aquaculture. Now, the main theme of the Expo is connecting minds, creating the future. And really, Expo is about creating opportunities for Australia to showcase their capabilities. And so for us as a state, that's about showcasing what do we have in Queensland that we can share with the world, and in what ways can we collaborate with other countries, other educational institutions, and how can we utilise the relationships that we're making during Expo to network and to create new opportunities for everybody. Oh, sorry. So we are going to be having ministerial missions, we believe, going through the period of Expo. We have not yet finalised those plans, but they are all on the drawing board at the moment. And I think really, you know, throughout this process, I've been working on Expo since November 2018, and basically from the very beginning, we have been looking at what opportunities are there for Queensland companies to be involved pre-Expo, to be involved during Expo, and to be involved post-Expo. So Expo, I think the biggest point to make, which everybody has made before me, is that this region, you really need to take a very long-term view. And Expo is not just about the commercial outcomes that will happen during that 6-month period. It's about the relationships that we build, and in order for us to access opportunities in the region as they arise as time goes on. So we would encourage anybody that is wanting to visit during that time to connect with us and to see, you know, what opportunities are arising. We will be publishing as things progress. We will be publishing our business program, and people will have an opportunity to see when the main events are that will be focused on education. And then you will, as a company, be able to make a decision on whether that's a time that you might like to visit and share in those opportunities and engage with other key stakeholders from institutions and organisations around the world. In the lead up, we're actually also trying to connect with other organisations and collaborate from around the world. So if there are any particular areas that might be of interest, then, you know, please do contact us and we will have a look at those and see what the priorities are and go from there. But really, it's just a wonderful opportunity for Queensland educational institutions to see what's out there in the world, where can you find new opportunities, and take those forward. So I think that brings us to the end of our webinar series, and we would actually like to now open the floor up to see if anybody has any questions that they would like to us to answer for them. I can see here some questions. Okay, so there's one here. What trends are you seeing in the region, particularly in higher education? Kelly, would you like to answer that one for us?
Sure. Look, thanks, Leah. Look, I think region, it is important to look at the sub-regions because, as I mentioned earlier, you can't make gross generalisations about such a patch. In terms of our education and the trends, I think what we're seeing, particularly across the region, is that Australia is still a great place to experience study and life. So I think our student numbers, particularly for the middle, are stable. What we are seeing is that particular scholarships market, it is a very competitive space, and we need to be able to offer be able to offer quality and value. I think particularly in terms of our education, we are seeing, as you know, as many of you may know, UAE is actually quite a hub for education. There are 33 different foreign institutions located in the UAE, so there is competition for Australia. But again, there is a good Australian footprint here in the UAE. We have 3 Australian universities that are active in the region. We have University of Wollongong, Dubai. We have Murdoch University and Curtin University that maintains campuses here in Dubai and also in Mauritius. So we are transnational education footprint delivering results for Australian education providers. I think in terms of, I mentioned Pakistan and the numbers are quite strong. I think in terms of trends, if the person who had the question has a particular market that they're interested in, happy to deep dive a little bit more in terms of that market. But look, very positive, but we need to maintain our position as Australia is a top 3 destination for international students. We have a lot of competition, particularly from countries like Canada and European countries. So we need to maintain our presence, we need to maintain our promotion, and we need to maintain our value proposition for international students studying in Australia.
Thank you so much, Kelly. Another question was, is it easy to do business in the UAE and Saudi Arabia? Commissioner, would you like to answer that one?
Sure, thanks, Lee. Look, I don't think any market is particularly easy. I think that you've got to have the right approach. You've got to do your due diligence on the markets. What's your competition? What's the demographics? And you've got to, reverting back to what I said about Middle East 101, it's all about the relationship. So if we are looking to our markets, TIQ can certainly help you and handhold or mentor you to navigate the different cultural cultures and also the protocols and the etiquette that's involved with doing business in the Middle East. So look, nothing is easy, no markets are easy, but certainly part of our role at TIQ is to assist you moving forward. So if anyone wants to sort of drill deeper or deep dive into that, we're very happy to assist and to take that offline and have a broader conversation. Thanks, Lee.
Thank you, Commissioner. And another question was, what are the likely sectorial opportunities in Saudi Arabia? David, would you like to take that one?
Sure, thanks, Lee. As mentioned earlier, yeah, look, it's going to be certainly multiple sectors. For example, as I mentioned, there's already some Queensland companies that have had some success in the infrastructure. In education in particular, we see, because of the tourism aspect and the amount of hotels and whatnot that's going to be built, hospitality within education would definitely be number 1. A little bit hard to say after that. Once we do our scoping mission, whenever that is, we'll have a much better idea. But because this is the giga projects are so large, if it makes sense, I don't think the Saudi Arabians know what they don't know what they need yet, if you know what I mean, because a lot of it's still only at the design phase. Some mobilisation has started on some of the projects, but there's going to be enormous needs that they don't even know they need at the moment. And, you know, a lot of that is going to require training, because without doubt, their number 1 mandate is to employ Saudi Arabians. To give you just a further insight into that, they don't keep statistics on women, but in the 18 to 30 year age bracket, in males, there's unemployment of around 30%. So that just gives you some idea. We see very much and Saudi Arabia isn't an easy market, but we think there's actually a model that to be followed because of the Aviation Australia Riyadh campus. They had some teething problems, but that facility is very much held up as the model. It is a centre, part of the Saudi Arabians' centre of excellences, and it is held in very high esteem by the Saudi Arabian government, and it's a very good model that is worked. It links back to industry, so people have jobs, and watch this space with the Giga projects. We'll have more information after the scoping mission. We've created some contacts there. It's about getting there and building the relationships and finding out what their precise needs are and how we can best help them and facilitate that, what could be a good fit for Queensland organisations. Hope that somewhat answers the question.
Thank
Thanks,
you, David. And the last question that came in was actually for me. How can Queensland companies get involved in Expo? So I just want to assure you that we are every day looking at what opportunities there are for Queensland companies, and with the postponement of Expo 2020 Dubai, the planning has been paused for a moment, and we will be re-engaging that planning a little later in this year once the COVID-19 recovery has become more in hand. The business program is 173 days straight over the 6 months, 7 days a week from 10 o'clock in the morning until 10 o'clock at night. So it's a very, very rigorous business program, and it will be across all sectors. It will involve all manner of different business functions, and we are building that program in collaboration with Austrade and DFAT, who in turn are then collaborating with pavilions from other countries. So once that program becomes, at the moment it's currently more a framework, and once we've fleshed that out a little, then we will be sharing that and the thematic calendar, and companies will then have the opportunity to have a look at that and to see where they think they can become involved. So we will be, and Trade and Investment Queensland is actually for the state of Queensland leading that planning. So keep in touch with your local trade and investment person that you are dealing with on an ongoing basis, and basically those opportunities will be put out into the public arena and the business program, and you can then make contact with us from that point. But in the interim, as David has said, for our region, if opportunities become available, and if we see new opportunities in the marketplace, then we will be liaising with TIQ in Brisbane, and they will in turn then be letting Queensland companies know. So thank you very much for taking the time to attend our webinar online today. It's great to have everybody with us, and we look forward to making contact with you in the future. And following this webinar, we will actually be sending out some links, and we would encourage you to get in contact with us from there. Thanks so much for joining us today.